the Microplastics Safety Act was just introduced to Congress, and this is absolutely amazing, but it also kind of pisses me off. So Democratic Representatives Janelle Bynum and Senator Jeff Merkley, as well as Republicans from Florida, Rick Scott and Greg Steube, have all sponsored this bill, which is asking for an official federal study looking into the dangers of microplastics. The 3-page bill would require RFK Jr. to fund a study so they could identify the major causes of microplastic exposure and study the impact of microplastics on children's health, hormones, cancer, and chronic illness, and reproductive health. RFK Jr. would need to submit a report to Congress within the year. And Senator Rick Scott, who is just inarguably a terrible person, said in a statement that he was especially concerned about the long-term harm microplastics pose to older Americans. Our elected representatives are starting to see the writing on the wall, and that like the FDA and the EPA and all of these groups that typically would do this, they've all been completely gutted. And so these kinds of big impactful things that the United States used to do, like they're not going to get done anymore unless they really push for it to make it happen. And so in that regard, this is really good that they're making this step. What pisses me off about this? Well, I mean, there's a few things, okay? Like number one, all of these horrible cuts have taken place so that we shouldn't have to even ask to have this happen. The FDA and the EPA shouldn't have been gutted. The National Institute of Health shouldn't have been so devastatingly gutted that we need to now intentionally fund it, right? That's really bad. And another thing that pisses me off about this is that we already know so many of these answers, right? I've talked about them in so many of my videos. There are now 15 studies, I'm about to do a video on this, showing that bottled water is our number one source of microplastics in our body, right? Straight up. And in a lot of those studies, it directly links the microplastics in our body to either diabetes, pregnancy-induced hypertension, or just high blood pressure, like straight up, right? And I do understand that we would need an official federal study. These guys are also really forcing RFK Jr.'s hand to stand behind his MAHA credentials. And he's gone against every single one of those, BT dubs. However, they are putting him on blast, which is another good thing about this, right? And really getting people behind it. Again, what pisses me off is that we already know this. We already know so many of these answers, and we shouldn't have to ask the government to do it because we created parts of our government to do this specifically. We already had those mechanisms in place. We don't need to create a bill called the Microplastics Safety Act in order to do it. However, I think it's good that these guys are seeing the writing on the wall that with all of these devastating cuts, we're going to need to ask and force the hand on every single one of these things, which is pretty sad.